What's up everyone, Michael aka Spirit here with an early impressions for Dragonpath, a game currently in early access. It is a top-down action game, kind of the top-down action RPG stuff, and I've seen they try to do a few things differently. However, I don't think they realize how many of these types of games there actually are, because this game really doesn't do all too much different. Now, I do want to state this game is in early access. This is an early impressions of the early access version, so everything you see is subject to change, as in it could improve, it could get worse, it could be completely different in the end. So do keep that in mind while we're going through this. But they did give me a review key, and I am obligated to do the whole review thing. And I probably wouldn't have made this video if that wasn't the case, and you'll see why as we continue inward. Anyways, so we're gonna look at the settings real quick because there's not much of them. So you got sound, which is your master volume, music volume, and effects volume. Now there was a launcher. This is a Unity game, so I had the Unity launcher that had the presets of low quality to high quality, which I think the highest was beautiful, which, yeah, okay. But yeah, so it does have that launcher, and I assume that would affect how your lighting works and all that stuff. I would like to see that in game, because currently the only thing in game is your brightness and your resolution, which I guess that's nice that you can change your resolution out of games, because I played some Unity games where you can't, and you can actually type in whatever the hell you want. So, well, as long as they're numbers, I just tapped randomly on the keyboard, but that doesn't work. But yeah, I could do like some weird resolution, although you can make Unity crash if you do some certain combination, so I would suggest not doing that. But yeah, so that's actually quite nice. You can do whatever resolution you want. Now, I'm not going to mess with mine because it took me a while to actually get it to run in full screen. For some reason, the game wanted really badly to be in a window and at 720p for no reason whatsoever, because when I launched the game, it was running in 720p instead of my native resolution. And when I tried to switch it to full screen, everything kind of screwed up in the Unity launcher. So I don't know what's up with that. It randomly fixed itself, so I think maybe it just got patched while I wasn't noticing, like, because I did wait a day or two, and then so maybe it got patched, I don't know, but that is an issue that some people may be having. And then also controls, you can actually use a controller, except I can't get my gamepad to work with this game, so I'm going to assume it's not implemented properly yet, but supposedly it does have rebindable buttons, which is quite nice, and then keyboard can also be rebound as well, and then you have the reset to default. Let's go ahead and return. And now let's actually go into the game. Now I'm going to go ahead and start a new game, and there's a reason for that, and I'll talk about it. I'm only in chapter 1 on this save because for some reason the game keeps resetting my progress, which it's the bane of early access. Anyways, when you start a new game, you got your easy, normal, and hard. I would recommend either easy or normal. Hard's going to be impossible with some of the game mechanics. And then you can actually supposedly play co-op. I haven't been able to get anybody to play with me because I don't think it has online co-op. I think it's local only, but for some reason it won't launch for me, so I don't know. And then one life is going to be your hardcore mode, where if you die, you're just gone. So anyways, gonna start up, go through our loading screen, and it does load quite quickly. And then we get a little bit of story stuff. So it's like, hey, here's some story stuff. Now there's the training halls. We're going to skip the tutorial because I already know how to play, so we get to skip all that stuff. Then we'll just go straight forward. So this game does have a story, as in it's trying to be a little bit story-centric. Now my main problem with that is the fact that there's no voice acting or anything in the game. So you're kind of stuck with this text block, and I wasn't actually able to read it the first time I played it because I was focusing on other things, because normally I'm multitasking, and I wasn't able to actually focus on the text, so I didn't actually know what it said the first time through. But basically, you're a dude in a dungeon, something happened, and then you have the dragon's breath that comes up and it saves you or something like that. And so we died because these guys are evil and stuff like that. Not very cinematic. There we go. And came the dragon. And so yeah, this is kind of like the first story bit. So basically the story is you got some power of the dragon and you have to stop stuff, I guess. That's what I can get. It's not amazing, and as you can see, the presentation's quite not there. Now, it is an early access, so I could say it might get better. However, the art direction so far isn't particularly good either. As in, if I zoom in here, you can actually see the textures are weird, to say the least. Now, if this does get improved, that would be nice, because graphics is one thing that's actually quite important. However, the other thing is the animations are also kind of wonky, and they feel really cheap. As in, this entire game actually feels that way. And that's actually going to be my biggest complaint with it, is actually the fact that it just feels cheap. It doesn't feel like a complete game. But I guess, once again, that could be because it's early access, and this could be completely irrelevant once it actually gets fully released. But so far, it just doesn't feel done yet. Like, it's just, I've played a lot of early access games that feel great. Like, Starbound is a great example, to where it's a complete game in its own in its own right when it's in early access. And it feels very polished to play. However, this one, not so much. Anyways, now we're actually going to be able to get to walk around. Now there's a book. We could read the books, and that actually gives you stories. It'll pop up in this little book. And then here's a shopkeeper, which we can't really buy anything from. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of that. Anyways, now we can actually get into more gameplay, and I can actually talk about it. So the gameplay is actually where this game kind of gets interesting. As in, you walk around with the left mouse as you would expect, or left stick, depending on how you're using it. And then you attack him. Now, one thing that's interesting, is you actually have a dash. And so the game's focused around the idea of attack and dodge. So you attack and dodge their attacks. Now, my main complaint with it is the fact that it doesn't work all the time. I like the idea that they're going for with it. As in, oh, you don't have a block, you're trying to dodge it. And this has been very successful in certain games. And I won't mention those games for the sake of, I don't want to promote other games during this review. But basically, it doesn't feel like you're actually in combat, and it doesn't feel very good to really play. But I like the direction that they're going with it. As in, the fast-paced kind of attack and dodge system is actually quite interesting. It does give you reticules for where, they'll use big attacks and stuff like that. And so, if my dash was able to charge quick enough for that, I would have been able to dodge it. Now, that actually is a big complaint of this game, is that the dodge actually has a timer. If you look down at the bottom left, you'll actually see my skill bar, and we do have abilities. I'll talk about those in a minute. But you'll see spacebar, that's going to be my dodge, and it actually has a cooldown. Now, this makes it nearly impossible to dodge every single attack. And so, instead, you're going to be running around in circles a lot more than would be particularly desired. So, if they remove that cooldown, that might actually be a lot more interesting, and it would make this game a lot more fast-paced. Now, there are also abilities. Now, early on, I don't really use them. But anyway, so here's a Q slash, which just does more damage. And then I also have a swirl. Now, abilities also have that same sort of thing to where this game just lacks feeling. I can just sit here and attack things. It's just it doesn't feel great. As in, it doesn't feel like I'm actually doing anything. Which is it's just that fact of lack of polish that this game has currently. And I keep saying this because it's true. That may be an early access thing, but at this point, I don't really see it improving. Now, if they do go over, they're going to have a lot of work to actually make that right. As in, they got to change up the animations, they got to change the way the hitboxes work, because the hitboxes are very wonky from what I've noticed. As in, everything seems to be the default circle/capsule that Unity uses for their character models. That means that there's a lot of times to where you'll actually get hit when you shouldn't have. And so that actually ends up causing a situation to where you just feel like you died unfairly. Also, a lot of the abilities' effects don't actually signify where they're hitting very properly, I should say. As in, if you're going to make area of attacks, then make it so that the area that it's going to attack is actually very, very visible. Make a bright, giant cone that just glows at you, and it's like, hey, look at this. This is going to kill you if you jump into it. Make that sort of thing. Now, with practice, you could probably get good enough to where you'd be like, oh, he's doing this, so he's obviously going to use this attack. And if you play on easy, you can literally just run up and kill everything without even having to worry about dodging, because that's the way easy is kind of designed. So if you wanted to play through for the story for some reason, then yeah, you could actually just do that. But from a gameplay standpoint, it just doesn't feel very, very great. They got a lot of work to go through. Does it say there's a chest in here? Oh, wait, no, I already got the chest. My bad. I can't go back to that door because I went into the boss room, but I don't think he's going to attack me yet. Anyway, so let's go ahead and look at the status stuff. Now, there are different weapons, and so they do actually play differently. So if I go ahead and equip this crossbow here, which that doesn't look like a crossbow to me. That looks like a gun. But there are guns, and then there's also hammers, large weapons. This guy's using a hammer. And they actually do play slightly differently. But ultimately, it's going to end up being the same amount of gameplay. So this game ultimately is kind of very, very shallow. And that's rather disappointing. And now I keep dying because I'm not playing very well. But that actually allows me to talk about one of the mechanics of this game that I'm actually quite annoyed with. And I'm actually going to go ahead and go into my other game. Now, I have gotten a little bit farther than this. I was on chapter 2 near the end, I think. It was chapter 2, part 3 or something like that. And I was actually... Wait a second. Oh, so never mind. I can't load it in because it just overwrote my save. Okay, never mind. So this game needs multiple save slots. That's the thing that it needs. Anyways, so basically, what I'm talking about is when you die, you lose experience. But the thing is, there's no way to actually make up that experience. And so if you get to a point to where you get into a room and you're stuck, and enemies will literally just kill you because you're not strong enough. And there's certain situations like, there's absolutely no way I can attack this guy and dodge his abilities very properly unless he uses a certain attack, which I still ended up getting hit, but I got my health back, so yeah. But basically, it's extremely hard to actually dodge things, and so you're going to run into a situation to where it's potentially, they're just going to end up killing you, no matter what your stats are. And so, well, not no matter what your stats are, but like, if you die, you lose experience, which lowers your stats, which means that enemies that already killed you are going to keep killing you, and there's no way to make that up. Games like, well, I won't say any names, but basically other top-down action RPGs introduce a lot of mechanics, like catch-up mechanics. And so like, oh, you know, you can't complete this area, just go backwards and you can clear that area. This game doesn't allow you to do that, at least not yet. Now, if they implemented a feature to where you could do that, then that would actually be quite nice. Now, one thing that a lot of people have been talking about on the forums and stuff like that is actually the length of the game. Now, this game is not randomly generated, as in it seems to be built in one specific way. At least that's one form I've noticed. At least the first chapters are that way. And people have been complaining that the game is actually relatively short and doesn't actually feature that much content, at least not yet. And I have to keep saying that because it's early access and it could change. But ultimately, they got a lot of work to get this game up and running to what I would consider a reasonable game feel. Now, I can actually equip better armor, which would actually be a good idea so I don't die as easily. That's just another sword. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that all the weapons kind of feel the same in the combat. And once again, that's another thing that they're going to have to change. Like, the amount of work that they have to get this game actually feeling like a good game is astronomical. And so I don't really see them adding a lot of content. And seeing as it's story-based, I guess they could extend the story, but I don't really know if they're going to or if they plan to. Now, that is something you could ask the developers. The developers have actually been quite active, as in that's actually a compliment that I have to them, is that they've actually been responding to feedback and stuff like that quite positively and quite well. As in, oh, hey, this is broken, let's try and fix that. And, you know, they actually get on stuff pretty dang quickly. However, there's larger complaints, such as the length, that haven't been fixed yet because they just need time to do it. So that gives me some hope for this game in the future, but ultimately, my conclusion on this is, oh yeah, there's also a dodge, which I haven't been using. I keep forgetting about it. So yeah, you can't actually dodge attacks. 1 second, let me end up showing that mechanic. I did die, so I have to actually go to the boss again. 1 second, gonna skip forward. Alright, and I'm back. So yeah, all those rooms didn't have respawning enemies, so since I lost that experience, I'm actually permanently out of that experience. Anyways, there is a block mechanic, so you can block stuff if you're quick enough, but it also takes up that blue bar that you see up at the bottom, which is actually used for your block meter, I guess. I think it's probably used for abilities too. It doesn't seem like it. Also, there's health potions, but I haven't actually found any of them. Now, I could probably purchase some. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that what I was talking about before is there is hope because the developers are active and they are listening to feedback. So that's great. And I hope that they can actually take that. And now that I use that block, I actually did pretty dang well. And I was focused a little bit more. We can continue on to the next one. So yeah, there is hope that this game can actually be great, but at its current state, it just doesn't feel to that point, and it's definitely not worth the asking price. As in, it is only, I believe it's $8 at the current moment, and I believe that they're focusing more on that cheaper side of things, as in, you know, oh, this game isn't too expensive, so it might be worth the pickup. But the thing is, there's a lot of top-down action RPGs that are also very, very cheap, and granted, they're older, but they're also great experiences, and they feel like, you know, a good game. They feel polished, whereas this one doesn't at all, really. And this game also does focus on the hardcore thing, but once again, the market for top-down action RPGs isn't exactly barren. Like, there's tons of them out there, and pretty much everything this game has to offer, there's already one that does it better, at least at this point. So, my conclusion on this game is I would probably wait to pick it up. After it leaves early access, I'll give it another look and see if it's actually worth playing. But in its current state, I couldn't possibly recommend it. It just doesn't feel that great. Now, if what you see looks interesting to you, and I'm obviously not very good at the game, but basically, if what you see is interesting to you and you want to check it out, it isn't that expensive, as in it's like $8 or something like that. So it's not a big asking price. So that may be worth it for some people. But For me, there's just too many games in the top-down action RPG genre that are great games, and they're just amazing games that feel great and they feel polished and they're done. And this one isn't even close to there yet, and they've got a ton of work to do. And while I wish the developer the best of luck, as I always do, I don't see it quite yet. I mean, it's a lot better than a lot of early access games that are out there, as in this one actually functions and it runs well, as in performance-wise, it's run perfectly, as in it runs at 60 constantly, and I'm sure it goes higher than that because it doesn't seem like it's a capped frame rate. And the controls are responsive as well, as in when I click stuff, it works. It just doesn't feel right. And so, yeah, that's kind of my conclusion. Just kind of wait on this one. You can follow it if you're interested, and then just kind of watch it. And if you see things kind of get better, and if I personally see it gets to a point to where it's actually worth recommending, I will definitely make another video and be like, hey, this game's actually worth checking out. But in its current state, I would not recommend this game. Anyways, this has been Michael, aka Spirit Shard, with an early impressions for Dragonpath, a top-down action RPG currently in early access. Do you want to restate that? It is in early access. So yeah, it's one of the better experiences that I've had with early access, but it's also not a very good one, unfortunately. It's fun to play for a little while, but I've definitely gotten bored of the combat, and it's gotten frustrating with some of the mechanics that they've introduced. And hopefully they improve it. It should get better. It is early access, and the developers are quite active, so might get better. But anyways, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.